And welcome, Raise Your Inner Game today. I'm David Levin. This is our Friday episode, so we're talking about the inner game of life. Tuesdays are for the inner game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. So how are you on this week? I can hardly believe how fast summer is going. Next week will be the 4th of July. My intuitive summer brain says that's halfway through. It's not actually true. That's how it pops up in my mind. Oh my God, summer's almost half over. Anyway, so far, so good. Pretty wet one for us so far. Gardeners are happy about that. People who play pickleball outside, not so much. But still all fine and good. Enjoying life. Hope you are feeling the same. Plenty to talk about this week. The fallout from Trump's attack on Iran. More DOJ assaults on the rule of law. Their continued attacks on science in our country. Some thoughts on comparing your work and yourself to others. And some great new recommendations. All right, we'll start with ups and downs. So what things gave me a lift this week and what things are pulling me down? A fun little up, speaking of rain. I had to go pick up our car from the shop the other day and a storm was coming. I didn't want to get soaked, so I jumped on my bike, raced over there trying to beat the rain. Nothing happening yet. I threw the bike in the back of the car, headed back home. Just a hint of a sprinkle at that point. Quick took our dog out to pee. I hate taking her out when it's raining, so I wanted to get that done before I started. We go out. Now there's just a little sprinkle starting, very, very light. Literally 30 seconds later, she's done. We're heading back in. It starts coming down enough that we hurry to get back inside. The moment we get in, the sky just opens up, pouring down. We missed it by seriously like 10 seconds. So that was fun. So now I'm thinking about Peter, who's working and on his bike, wondering if he'll need a ride when he gets off. 3 minutes later, he comes in the back door looking like he just jumped into the pool with his clothes on. He had taken off work early to beat the storm. It started right as he was coming home. Anyway, little thing, but a really super fun moment. Tickled me pretty good. Another up, I think I mentioned, on Father's Day, I got 2 new hats at REI. One was a ball cap style, the other more of an active sun hat. So I was out at a live music event that happens here in town every other week. I always love that event. I was on my scooter, which was also super fun. So I'm heading back. When I pull into the garage, I notice my hat is missing. It must have fallen off somewhere on the way home. Bummer. So I race back to the event, retrace my steps a couple of times. No hat. I was so bummed out. I love the hat. Just got it. Can't believe I lost it already. We sort of half joked that we were going to put up signs around town with a picture. Have you seen this hat? That would have been funny. But I'm super bummed about it, right? So the next day, I'm thinking about ordering a new one. I get a text from my niece. Hey, David, meant to text you last night, but I have your hat. I saw it fall off your scooter and I picked it up. Yay! What a happy moment that was, you can imagine. Super fun. And I have my hat back now. Probably the biggest up this week was that I officially finished the new song I was working on. And I think you'd have to say it came out pretty well. Everyone seems to like it. I mean, what are they going to say? But they seem sincere. I'm very happy with it. Also, and probably most important, the mix was good. And that was the big question, right? Remember, one of the main barriers to me wanting to make music again was thinking I could never get a good enough mix because of my hearing loss. And if you don't know, the mix is just how it sounds. But between the new AirPods hearing assist feature and doing some quick studying of mixing techniques, it actually sounds pretty good in the headphones, in the car. I had a music biz friend give it a listen. We, tons of experience in the studio. He said it sounded great. So that whole problem is now officially gone, which is just remarkable to me and great. Feels great. Feeling good about all of that. I had another song pop into my head almost immediately. A fun, upbeat one this time, which I've been wanting to do, been wishing I had one of those in the mix. Different mix, by the way. Just the combination of songs I've got coming together. That one's coming together very quickly. Really, it's been 36 hours now, and it's like 98% done structurally. I just need to work on the production, which will still take weeks, but that's great so far. Same problem, though. Massive bandwidth hog. I love the ideas coming. I love the experience, just being so immersed in it. But, it's a practical example. I'm 6 hours behind schedule on writing this pod. It's just really hard to break away from that creative pull. Anyway, fun overall, working on compartmentalization. For my downs, the main one right now is the never-ending gaslighting and bullshit from this administration. I mean, we know that's what they do, right? No surprise. But for some reason, it's especially disheartening because of how serious the things are that they're lying about. Back in the beginning of Trump 1, if you remember, they started right out of the gate with Sean Spicer lying about the crowd sizes at the inauguration. That was weird and troubling, but also funny because who cares, right? But this attack on Iran and the risks associated with it could not be more serious, right? They truly could not. But these clowns are simply not capable of doing their job as adults. Pete Hegseth is basically the new Sean Spicer, except with bunker-busting bombs, which is terrifying. I honestly don't know what he thinks he's doing. He's the head of the Defense Department. He needs to be a serious and credible authority on what they're doing. When journalists ask him questions, fair questions that we deserve answers to, like, for example, did they really destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities, or was it, as reported, just a setback of a few months? The answer to that matters, but he will not answer directly. All he does is yell and attack reporters for asking the questions in the first place. It's not serious. It's not what the job requires, and it's depressing to be constantly reminded of who we have in charge right now. Anyway, that's been weighing on me a bit this week. All right, that's ups and downs. Next up, top stories. The big story this week is the fallout from the Iran attack. I already talked about Hegseth yelling at reporters. Trump was even more over the top with that, calling the major outlets scum, saying their only interest was to make him look bad as if he needed help with that. And he created the problem in the first place when he came out and said it was a total obliteration before it was possible to know that. He knows better. His advisors are telling him that. Sir, we don't know for a while what effect it had. We won't know. But the actual effect was never his concern. Actual policy is never his concern unless it affects him personally. What he really cares about is just the story of basically everything. He wanted this attack, even though his intelligence people said the threat was not imminent. He wanted it because it would sound like a win for him. It's the same playbook as with the election. The plan all along with that, I'm sure you remember, was to say he won before the votes were even counted, because that was the story he wanted to be true. Same thing here. He comes out way too early, calls it an obliteration. He loves that word, and then spends the rest of his time attacking anyone who questions that story. Never mind intelligence people who really know, right? Saying, maybe not. Especially looks like they got the uranium out at a time and no one knows where it is right now. So based on what we know so far, you really can argue that we were safer long term when we had a diplomatic deal with Iran about their program that Trump canceled in his first term. Anyway, no surprise they would screw this up. It's just another in a long line of dumb and increasingly dangerous things they're doing. Just imagine all the things we don't know about and may never know about. Another item that strikes me as a bigger deal than the coverage, indicates is Trump nominating Emil Bove as a circuit court judge. Emil, maybe? Bove, if you remember, was one of his attorneys in the Manhattan criminal trial, as well as other cases. He was reported this week to have directed people in the DOJ to defy court orders regarding deportations and then try to cover it up. It's hard to overstate the significance of that for an attorney. In any other world, this would be a big story, at least for him, and would immediately disqualify him for the position, which is a lifelong appointment, by the way. But the Senate, at least the Republicans in the Senate, don't seem especially bothered. And I just can't believe it. I can't understand it. Haven't they learned anything yet? Do they genuinely not believe in the rule of law? I can't believe that. How can they think it's a good idea to put this guy in a position of power like that? Related note, and I really don't understand this, but Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, who is turning out to be one of the most dangerous people in the administration, is suing every judge, 15 federal judges in Maryland, over their rulings blocking deportations. How is it possible that the Justice Department is at war with our own judges, who is supposed to be standing up for the rule of law in our country? They are systematically trying to erode the authority of the courts and our whole system of due process. It's just so unbelievable. In the dumb category, they are closing the only agency that investigates industrial chemical accidents. Let's hope we don't have any of those. Speaking of Iran, one of the risks of our attack on them is that they will order terrorist attacks in response, but the FBI has, to a great degree, been reassigned away from terrorism work to immigration work. Hard to think that's a good idea. Trump also put a 22-year-old kid straight out of college in charge of a terrorism prevention department. It sounds like an Onion headline, but it's an actual fact. What in the world are they thinking? They truly do not take their role seriously. Any of them, it seems like. The big tax bill working through Congress wants the U.S. Postal Service to sell all the EV delivery trucks they just bought and tear out the new charging stations they installed for them. How does that make sense? Those trucks can't really be sold. They're purpose-built for mail delivery. No one else can really use them. It would cost a ton of money to rip out their charging stations they just installed. And by the way, EV delivery trucks will save money in every way. EVs are cheaper to own and operate. Never mind the environmental benefits. Why in the world would they want to do that? Who does it help? It makes no sense. They are rescinding protection for 59 million acres of federal land for logging. Easy to see who benefits from that one. Trump's rich buddies, as always. The National Science Foundation, RFK Jr.'s realm, is being kicked out of their building with no plans for where else to put them. This ongoing story is not as much in the headlines, but it is devastating for us long term. We are systematically setting back science in this country for maybe ever. I don't see why people would invest here anymore once they get established elsewhere. And I simply cannot think of any good that'll come from it. No one benefits from it, at least not in our country. We have been a science leader for generations, which made us richer in every way. But we're tearing all that down. And I cannot figure out why. I feel like I've ranted about this in the past, but I'm just continually reminded of how dumb and, self-destructive it is. It just makes no sense. In the small category, Trump's desperate desire to get a Nobel Peace Prize is one of the most embarrassing things I've ever seen in a public figure. The only positive thing you can say about it is that he isn't hiding it from anyone. It's right out in the open. I don't know if you saw this, but he just came right out and complained about it. He put out a long post. Everyone knows I deserve it, maybe more than anyone ever, but they won't give it to me because they only give it to liberals, so I don't care. The people know. But of course, the post itself proves he very much cares, and also that he has zero self-awareness or shame. It's just mortifying. Such a toddler, and a troubled toddler at that. In the corruption category, Trump, his own financial reports, when we know he lies about everything, hides the worst information, his own reports showed that he earned $640 million last year, mostly from crypto and selling Trump-branded merch, basically, during the campaign. Shoes, guitars, NFTs. Unbelievable. He's been a failed businessman all his life. That's well documented. He rips people off. His companies go bankrupt. But politics has been a gold mine for him and his family. None of this is officially illegal or disqualifying from office, though all of it should be. And so we have a lot of repairs to make to our system when we get back into power. All right, that's top stories this week. Next up, Inner Game Gold. Last week we talked about the power of stories. I think this is more important than people generally realize. And we were just talking about that a minute ago with Trump's motivations. He's all about the story, especially the story that makes him look great. He is a poster child for the danger of stories. This week, I want to talk about the idea that you should never compare your inner game to someone else's outer game. We all tend to look more grown up and successful and together than we feel on the inside. And even then, we actually are on the inside at times. So when you compare your inner self with how someone else looks on the outside, you give yourself the false impression that there's something wrong or lacking with you. The reality is, no matter how it looks, we all struggle with the same things: insecurity, imposter syndrome, lack of focus and belief and willpower. It's just life. So I think it's helpful to be reminded of that. I'm also thinking of it this week in the context of creativity. I'm reminding myself as I work on these songs of how many iterations they go through. And the early ones are rough, right? Like embarrassing, rough. This last song, I told you I'm so happy with it now. I probably had 30 or 40 different versions of that before I got to the final one. Now, not completely different. Once I get the main structure down, each version after that is just a little different from the last one. But still, I don't want you to hear the earlier ones, right? Because they're not as good. They're not done. So that ties back to this inner game idea. Especially in the early stages, it is not helpful to compare what you have to someone else's final works. Same idea with books. Every author I've ever heard talk about this says some version of, "Thank goodness for my editor," right? You do not want to see what that book looked like before they got to it. And that's been true for every book I've been involved with too. So that's a little rambling, I suppose. Sorry about that. But hopefully you find it relevant for something you do. In my mind, it's all the same thing. Don't let the finished, polished, external experience of things give you the false impression that there's something lacking or wrong with you or your work. I hope that makes sense. In any case, that's Inner Game Gold this week. Reminder, if you're enjoying the show, please do give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Help us reach more people. Help us share more Inner Game Gold. So thank you in advance for that. Next up, our challenge of the week. This week, let's think about this comparing idea, however it applies to you. I just thought of another example. Pickleball. If you've played for a few months or a year, comparing yourself to people who've played for many years is just a bad idea. The tendency in a situation like that is to think that you're just not good at it, right? And may never be good at it. But all it really says is that they've been playing longer. You tend to get better the longer you do it. So anyway, however it applies to you, see if you can think of examples this week of when you do this and how it makes you feel. And then just think it through. Think the arguments through. It probably won't take much to see that it's not really a fair comparison. It doesn't really make sense. It's certainly not helpful to you to do it. And then seeing that, hopefully that should make it a little easier to stop yourself from doing it next time. As with all things like this, it's a matter of repetition and internalizing it to really make a change over time. But every little bit helps. If you want to accelerate that change, our book, Raise Your Inner Game, and Sports Academy Training for Athletes will also help. But that's our challenge this week. Take a little time, do a little work on relieving ourselves of the burdens of inaccurate and unfair comparisons. All right, next up, highly recommended. Finally finished Fever Beach. Enjoyed that very much. Happy to recommend that. And all of his books, really, Carl Hyacin. I love him. Started a new book, pretty interesting. Not quite like anything I've read before. It's called The Surf House by Lucy Clarke. Sort of a crime drama, but not really. I can't really tell what to expect in a good way. Too soon to say if I can recommend it, but I expect I'll be able to. She's a very good writer. I'll keep you posted on that. The big thing this week was a documentary on Netflix called Becoming Led Zeppelin. Oh my, did I ever love that. I'm a big Zeppelin fan in general, maybe even more now than before. I played a lot of it live. The leader of my first big band out of high school was a huge fan and had even been in an earlier band that was famous for their Zeppelin covers because he could sound exactly like Robert Plant, their singer, like Goosebumps, similar to him. Anyway, I have a lot of history with the music, but I didn't know really anything about their background. And it is fascinating how much the band was a very specific vision and plan from their founder, Jimmy Page, the guitar player. But the biggest thing was seeing the live footage of their early shows. I did not realize how great they were live. Later, when they got into the rock star excesses and all that, they were actually famous for being pretty disappointing live, and that's all I really knew about them. But these early shows were great. They're so original and powerful, just ferocious, and I loved seeing that. So cannot recommend that one highly enough. Becoming Led Zeppelin on Netflix. All right, that's our show this week. Thank you as always for joining. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great week. Keep up the good work. I'll see you next time.